Today I will discuss the accounting process for a service business. And to start with, discuss the objective of this module. The first one is that you should be able to enumerate the steps in the accounting cycle. The second one is state the rule of debit and credit and the normal balances of accounts. Apply the rules of debit and credit in recording business transaction. Record business transactions under the double entry system. And then pause transactions from journal to ledger. Okay, ledger. And then prepare a trial balance. Here is the accounting cycle. As you can see, there are 11 steps in accounting cycle. We are done with step 1. We already discussed this in module 2. For module 3, you will be able to learn step 2, 3, and 4. Okay? And then here in the accounting cycle, there are some non-mandatory steps. So what are those? Those are the reversing entry. Yan. Hindi ito mandatory. And also worksheet. Kasi you can prepare naman a financial statement even without preparing a worksheet. Pero dito, since kayo ay mga estudyante pa lang naman, dadaanan natin yung worksheet. Journalizing. What is journalizing? It is the process of recording business in the book of original entry called journal. So dito, pag-aaralan natin kung paano ba mag-enter ng transaction into a journal. And then we also have the double entry bookkeeping. It is the method of recording business transactions which recognizes the dual effect of a transaction. When we say dual effect, kaya siya tinawag na double entry bookkeeping, is because for every debit, there should be a corresponding credit entry. Okay, kaya nga siya dual effect. Hindi pwede na debit lang lahat, hindi rin pwede na credit lang lahat. Ito yun, no? For every debit entry, there is a corresponding credit entry with, take note of this, equal amount. So, dapat yung total ng debit mo, kahit gaano kadami ang debit, should be equal to the total of credit entries. So, you are also familiar na with the account, di ba? We have already discussed this. When we say account, it is the record of each asset, liability, owner's equity, revenue, and expense items. So, ito yung mga na-discuss na natin, yung, for example, yung under ng asset, meron tayong cash, accounts receivable, equipment, di ba? Yun yung mga account. Kung matatandaan ninyo dun sa transaction worksheet na ginawa ninyo, di ba? Naglalagay kayo ng effect if there is an increase or decrease dun sa bawat account na affected. So each element of the financial statements is given a specific account title. So when we say account title, yun na nga yun, yung cash, AR, accounts payable, capital, yun yung mga account title. And then also T account. So as you can see, kaya siya tinawag na T account because it resembles big letter T. Nakita niyo naman dito, di ba? Letter T. Dito sa taas, dito nilalagay ang account title. And always remember that the left side of T account is for debit and then the right side is for credit. Tandaan nyo ha, left side debit, right side credit. So what is debit and credit? Debit and credit comes from Latin words. Okay? Debit is debere, meaning to owe, and credit is credere, which means trust or belief. Debit is abbreviated as DR and credit as CR. So, yan ang kanilang abbreviation. The increase or decrease in an account is being made by means of a debit or credit. If you can recall dun sa transaction worksheet, ang nag-focus tayo sa pag-analyze kung ano bang effect ng certain transaction to a specific account, whether it is increase or decrease. The reason is because that is a preparation for you para i-apply yon dito sa debit and credit. Kasi malalaman mo kung debit o kung i-debit mo ba or i-credit mo ba ang isang account based sa analysis mo if there has been an increase or decrease for that specific account. So, debited, it doesn't mean that the account is increased. Okay, hindi ibig sabihin na porket dinebit, increase yon. And same goes with credit. Hindi rin ibig sabihin na pag sinabing credited, automatically decreased yon. No, it's not like that. Okay? Because there are rules of debit and credit. So, kung meron kayong dapat mamemorya dito sa accounting, ito yon. And the good news is, it is not difficult to memorize because you only have to memorize the effect or the rule for the 5 elements, which are asset, expense, liability, income, and capital. As you can see here, on the left side, nakita niyo yung arrow natin pataas because these are increases. So, here is the rule. When asset increase, debit siya. When expense increase, debit also. When liability, income, and capital increase, pare-pareho silang credit. Okay? Now, kabaliktaran lang pag nag-decrease. So, when asset and expense are decreased, credit sila. And when liability, income, and capital are decreased, pare-pareho din silang debit. So, madali lang tandaan. Asset and expense, pareho sila. Increase in debit, decreased in credit. Liability, income, and capital, increased in credit, decreased in debit. So, here is the rule of debit and credit. Ito yung summary. As you can see, asset, di ba? Debit, dito credit. Okay? Kasi ito increase, ito decrease. Kaya, nandito yung word, the normal balance. Tatandaan niyo, when we say normal balance, it is the side of the account where it is increased. So here, in asset, nag-i-increase siya sa debit. That's why debit ang normal balance niya. Same goes with the expenses. Nag-i-increase siya sa debit, so that's why ito ang kanyang normal balance. And also sa owner's drawing. Diba na-discuss ko na pag sinabi natin owner's drawing, it is a deduction from owner's equity or capital. And since the normal balance of owner's equity, you can see here the normal balance is credit. So if owner's drawing is a deduction, that's why the normal balance ng owner's drawing ay debit. Okay? And also, the liabilities, revenues, and owner's capital, pare-pareho sila na ang normal balance ay credit. Now, we have here the illustration on how to apply debit and credit. The first illustration or transaction is June 1, wherein Attorney Flores invested 200,000 in his law firm. Okay, so what is the first question here? If you can recall, we already discussed na when analyzing a transaction, the first step is to analyze what accounts are affected by the transaction. here you can see that the accounts that are affected are the cash and capital. Okay? Kasi nga, di ba, nag-invest siya ng cash and because of the investment, nagkaroon siya ng capital. Now, the second question is, what is the effect on those specific accounts? How about sa cash? Okay, is it increase or decrease? The effect on cash is what? That is increase. Okay? Increase ang effect niyan. Plus. Bakit? Kasi nga, di ba, nag-invest ng cash si Attorney Flores doon sa business. So, ibig sabihin, yung cash ng business nadagdagan. Now, what is the effect naman on capital? Since nagkaroon siya ng investment, his capital is also what? Increased. Okay? Now, alam na natin na both cash and capital are increased in this specific transaction. Now, what we need to do is to apply the rule. What is the rule? Cash. What is cash? Is it asset, liability, owner's equity, revenue, or expense? Cash is an asset account. So that's why, according to the rule, pag daw nag-increase ang asset, ano nga yun? Debit. Pag nag-decrease, credit. That's why you can see here, ang debit natin ay cash. Okay? And also, according to rule, pag owner's equity ay nag-increase, saan siya? Sa credit. Here, nag-increase ang capital which is under owner's equity. So, that's why ang credit natin ay capital. So, nakita ninyo? Ito na. May entry na tayo. Debit, cash, credit, capital. Okay? So, that is the first illustration. The second one, purchase office supplies for cash. So, if you're going to analyze this transaction, it means that nagbayad ng cash in order to purchase office supplies. So, what is the effect on cash? Obviously, it is decrease. Kasi di ba, you paid for office supplies. So, that's why nabawasan ang cash mo. Okay? Now, anong binili mo? You bought office supplies. So, what is the effect on office supplies? Dahil bumili ka ng office supplies, it is increase. So, you can see here, office supplies is increased, cash is decreased. Now, we can apply the rule. If asset is increased, it should be debit, kaya debit. Debit office supplies. And dahil nag-decrease ang cash, kaya credit cash. Next, number 3, purchase office equipment worth 50,000. Okay. Nagbayad ng 10% down, 10,000 down payment, and then the remaining balance is nag-issue ng promissory note. Now, what are the accounts that are affected? They are the office equipment, cash, and notes payable. Now, what are the effects? Sa office equipment, dahil bumili ka ng office equipment, the effect is what? Is increase. Diba? Nadagdagan ang office equipment mo because bumili ka. Now, what is the effect on cash? You paid for a 10,000 down payment. So, that's why yung cash mo ay ano? Ay nabawasan. So, that is decrease. So, what is the effect on notes payable? Nag-issue ka ng promissory note, nagkaroon ka ng utang. That's why it is increase. Now, pwede na nating ilapat ang rule. Every time the asset is increased, it should be debit. That's why debit office equipment. Now, credit yung cash because it is decreased. And notes payable according to rule, every time liabilities are increased, it should be credit. So that's why credit cash and credit notes payable. Now, di ba sabi natin, we should always account for the dual effect, which means that in every debit, there should be a corresponding credit and the amount should be equal. Ngayon, tingnan natin, equal ba yung amount nila? As for office equipment, how much ba ang amount ng office equipment? Diba? That is 50,000. 50K. How about sa cash? Magkano ang amount ng cash? That is the 10,000. Kasi diba, 10,000 yung binayaran. Okay? How about sa notes payable? The balance, diba? Binayaran na ang 10,000, 50,000 lahat ng dapat bayaran. So, ibig sabihin, ang notes payable niya ay 40,000. Now, balance ba sila? 10,000 plus 40,000 equals what? 50,000. Okay, so that is the total of credit. And then the amount of debit is also 50,000. So, balance. So, ganun ha. Every time you prepare an entry, however the number of debit is and the number of credit is, dapat pag tinotal nyo sila ay balance. Next illustration. Here, the owner issued check in payment of the promissory note. Naalala nyo kanina, di ba? Bumili ng equipment, nag-issue ng promissory note which is worth 40,000. So, what are the accounts affected? They are the notes payable and cash. So, what is the effect on notes payable? Siyempre, dahil nagbayad, it is decreased. What is the effect on cash? Because nagbayad, nabawasan din ang cash. Now, we will apply the rule of debit and credit. Since nabawasan ang notes payable, that's why it is debit. And dahil nabawasan ang cash, it is credit. Next illustration. So, the owner received 50,000 cash from clients for services rendered for cash. So when we say when you see services rendered, always remember that the account affected here is what? Is revenue. Okay? Diba sabi nga natin on accrual basis, pag nag-render na ng service, automatically you earned a revenue regardless kung binayaran ka na ba o pa. Now, revenue has several account titles and one of them is professional fees. Professional fees ang ginamit dito because this is a law firm. So, always remember kapag ang services na nire-render ng isang negosyo ay professional services like yung mga accountants, engineer, doctor, and lawyers, ang tawag sa revenue nila is professional fees. Now, titingnan ninyo kung ano yung klaseng negosyo ng business. For example, the business is laundry services. So that's why, pagka nag-earn siya ng revenue, ang tawag mo sa revenue niya ay laundry revenue. Okay? Pero kapag naman dun sa problem, hindi given kung ano yung specific activity ng business, ang pinaka-general or generic account title na ginagamit for revenue is what? Service revenue. Hindi service rendered ha, because I encountered sa mga past student ko, nalilito sila, ilalagay nilang account title, service rendered. No, it should be service revenue. Kakaintindihan pa tayo? Okay. Now, since naka-receive siya ng cash, the effect on cash is increase, and then the effect on professional fees is increase. And there, I may tip din ako sa inyo, tatandaan ninyo, kapag service revenue, it is always what? Increase. Okay, increase yan lagi. Kasi you cannot decrease service revenue because once you rendered a service, mababawi mo pa ba yun? Hindi mo na mababawi ang service na binigay mo. Eh, di ba, according to accrual basis of accounting, once you delivered your service, you will automatically recognize service revenue. So that's why service revenue is always increased. Now, what is the rule on debit and credit when it comes to revenue? If it is increased, it should be what? Credited. So, credit yung professional fees, and because nag-increase ang cash, debit siya. Next, billed a client for services rendered on account. When we say billed, you issue your client a bill. Pag sinabing bill, ibig sabihin naniningil ka sa kliyente mo at nakalagay dun sa bill na yun kung magkano ang dapat niyong bayaran. And when we say rendered on account, it means that the owner rendered services pero hindi siya binayaran ng kliyente. That's why the accounts affected here are accounts receivable and professional fees. Accounts receivable because of the word on account. May pautang ka. So what is the effect? Increase or decrease? So the effect is increase. And because you rendered services, that's why you earn, or the owner earn, professional fees. So ano ang sabi natin sa professional fees? It is always increase. Now we can apply the rule of debit and credit. Since nag-increase an accounts receivable, which is an asset, that's why it is debit. And nag-increase din ang professional fees, which is a revenue account, that's why it is credit. Next, receive payment from the client to whom services were previously rendered on account. So here, ang nangyari naman, nakasingil ka ng pautang. Okay? You receive payment. So that's why ang affected is cash and it is increased. Now, that payment comes from a client na previously may utang sa'yo. That's why ang affected ay accounts receivable. So, since yung client mo ay nagbayad, ano mangyayari sa accounts receivable mo, sa pautang mo? It will be mababawasan siya. Okay, and then the next step again is to apply the rule of debit and credit. Since cash is increased, that's why it is debit. Accounts receivable is decreased, that's why it is credit. Next illustration, the owner withdrew. Pag nakita ninyong withdrew, automatic na yan. Alam niyo na kung anong account title yan, di ba? Tapos, for personal use. So, affected dyan ay drawing and syempre cash. So, what is the effect on drawing? Is it increase or decrease? Because nag-withdraw siya for personal use, syempre yung drawing account niya will be increased. Okay? But what is the effect on cash? Since nag-withdraw siya ng cash, so the effect on cash is decrease. And then we will apply the rule of debit and credit. Since nag-increase ang drawing, it is debit. And since nag-decrease ang cash, it is credit. Okay, next illustration, paid office rent for the month. So, nagbayad ka ng office rent. So, you are familiar naman na when you see office rent, it is part of expense. It is under expense element. And what expense is it? It is rent expense. So, the accounts that are affected are rent expense and cash. Since you incur, okay, nagamit mo or na-consume mo yung renta, that's why the effect on expense is increase. Take note din expenses are always increased. Kasi diba, Saka lang tayo nagre-recognize ng expense kapag na-consume or nagamit na natin ang services or specific asset. Since nagamit mo na yan, hindi mo na rin yan pwedeng ibalik. That's why it is always increase. And then, cash, dahil nagbayad ka, the effect is decrease. So, since nag-increase ang rent expense, that's why it is debit. Diba? According to rule, when expenses are increased, it should be debited. And since nag-decrease ang cash, it should be credit. So here is the summary of the illustration from letter A. K. Yan din yung diniscuss ko kanina. Now, we will go to the procedures in recording business transactions in a 2-column journal. So here, I will be requiring you to buy 2-column journal kasi gagawa kayo. Okay? So I will send you a separate video on how to do 2-column journal. But for now, I will discuss muna the steps or procedures kung paano ginagamit ang 2-column journal. The first one is the date column. Siguro I should proceed na lang. Dito na lang pala tayo. Meron sample. Okay, take note ha. Sa 2-column journal, lagi yung may heading. Ang heading niya ay General Journal. So, every time nagagawa kayo ng 2-column journal, lalagyan niyo siya. Ang General Journal nakalagay yan sa gitna ng journal. And then, on the right side, you will put the page number. So, kung nasa unahan kayo, syempre page 1. Pag pumunta na kayo sa likod ng journal, ang ilalagay na dito ay page. Now, a general journal has 5 columns, which are date, particulars, PR, ang ibig sabihin ng PR ay posting reference, debit, and credit. Ngayon, bawat column na yan, iisa-isahin natin because may rule kung paano ini-enter ang information sa bawat column. So, you should remember these rules kasi pagka hindi ninyo ito nasunod, kahit tama ang journal entry ninyo, mababawasan kayo ng points. Okay? Sige. First is the date column. You can see here, nakalagay yung month. Ito yung dito nga lang, may kulang siya. Kasi dapat, sa taas ng month, nakalagay yung year. Yung year. Okay? Yan, dito nakalagay yung pwedeng 2020, 2020, 2019, depende kung ano yung nakalagay sa problem. Tapos, dito sa maliit na maliit na column na to, dito nyo ilalagay yung number. Kung mapapansin nyo, yung month, hindi na siya inulit, diba? Wala siya dito, wala rin siyang month dito. Kasi ang month, nilalagay lang siya dito lang sa pinaka-una. Okay? Wala ka nang ilalagay dun sa mga kasunod. Ano na lang ang ilalagay mo? Ito na lang. Yung number na lang ng date. Malinaw ba tayo? O, yan ang dapat ginagawa sa date column. Ngayon, paano kung tapos ka na dun sa first page at pumunta ka na sa second page? Ganun din ulit. Maglalagay ka ng June, tapos here, yung month pala, tapos here, tapos ganun din ulit ang. Okay? Uulitin mo lang. So, we're done with the date. The next one is the particulars or account titles. Dito sa column na to, dito natin nilalagay yung account title ng entry natin. Dito nga sa example, ang debit niya is cash, ang credit niya is Alex Flores Capital. Always remember, ang laging nauuna ay debit. Okay? Debit mo. Kasunod ay credit. Hindi pwedeng mauna na ang entry mo ay credit bago debit ha. Laging ang una sa entry ay debit. And as you can see, ang positioning niya, malapit siya dun sa line. Okay? Pwede ka din namang mag-space, pero wag mo masyadong ilayo. Kasi ang rule, pag credit na, naka-indent. Nakita nyo yon? Ang credit, hindi siya pantay ng debit. Okay? Naka-indent siya. To signify that this account title is credit. Paano kung dalawa yung credit? Ito yung example dito. Napansin ninyo, naka-indent sila pareho. Pantay lang sila. Ibig sabihin, ito lahat yung credit. So, ulitin ko ulit, laging nauuna ang debit. Paano kung nagkataon na dalawa yung debit? Eh di, pantay din dun. Unahin nyo muna ilagay lahat ng debit bago nyo isunod lahat ng credit. Okay, malinaw ba tayo doon? Ngayon, this one, itong mga to nakikita nyo, these are the explanations. Sa explanations, tayo ay, wala. Hindi na tayo magre-require din sa inyo. Hindi na ako magre-require sa inyo. Kasi dagdag, isipin nyo pa yan. Baka ma-stress na kayo masyado. So, that's why ito, hindi na natin to isasama. Pero, take note, always leave one space. Pansin nyo, one space after the entry, one space after the entry, one space. Huwag dikit-dikit ha, always leave one space. So that's for the particulars or account title. Next is the PR or the posting reference. Here, ang nilalagay dito ay account number. Okay? Account number ng specific account. Yan na may binibigay sa problem. For example, lalagay cash 110. So, ilalagay nyo dito 110. Kasi that will be your reference sa pag-post. Okay? Yun lang nilalagay dyan sa PR. Ngayon, pag walang nakalagay sa problem, hindi wala kayo. The next column is debit. Dito nyo naman ilalagay yung amount. Nakita niyo, di ba, cash, 200,000 siya. So, dapat katapat ng cash, tapos katapat ng debit card. Okay, paano siya sinusulat? Napansin nyo ito? Ito yung centavo. Pagka zero naman, ginuguhitan na lang. Nakita nyo, guhit na lang. Ngayon, ano ito? Itong first column na ito, this is the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, 100,000. Pag inabot ng million, dito na. Okay? Ganun lagi ang paglalagay ha. Hindi pwedeng kung saan nyo lang maibigan ilagay yung, yung number. You should be aware or you should always be mindful of the placement of the number. Ulitin ko, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, 100,000. Dito na yun. Okay, kaya mapapansin ninyo, ang pantay-pantay dyan yung zero. Dito sila hindi nagpapantay-pantay kasi depende nga katulad dito, 5,000 lang naman. Ito naman, 50,000. Okay? Tapos, on every first amount, you should put what? Peso sign. Wala lang peso sign itong sample natin. Paano yung mga kasunod na amount? Wala nang peso sign yan ha. Huwag masyadong masipag maglagay ng peso sign. Sa bawat page, isang peso sign sa unang amount ng debit at isang peso sign sa unang amount ng credit. Okay, ito, wala na rin yung peso sign, wala na rin peso sign. Hanggang matapos nyo. Kaya pag nag-page 2 na kayo, saka nyo na ulit lalagyan ng peso sign yung first amount ng debit credit. Pagdating sa credit, tandaan nyo ha, tapat siya nung account title. Ayun. Katapat ng account title, katapat din ng ref. Okay? Kung may question kayo, pwede naman kayong mag-message dun sa group chat natin para masagot. We will now proceed to the ledger. So, the group of accounts is called ledger. Okay, so yun ang tawag pag group of accounts, ang tawag doon ay ledger. Now, the ledger provides summary. Ito yung keyword dyan. Summary of transaction for an accounting period. Kasi sa ledger, doon natin sinasummarize, for example, yung cash. Ano ba lahat yung naging transaction sa cash? Tapos, doon din natin i-compute magkano na lang ba ang remaining amount ng cash? Magkano ba yung remaining balance ng cash? Okay? So, here, each account has an individual record wherein the effects of business transactions are summarized. Okay. Now, the general ledger contains the accounts which are arranged in the following order. Ito hindi dapat magkabalik-baliktad na ay asset, kasunod liability, kasunod capital, next revenue, at ang huli ay expense. So, hindi dapat magkabalik-baliktad yan. Now, if the journal is called the book of original entry, ang ledger naman is called the book of final entry. Kasi ito na yung last na book wherein you will enter the transactions individually. Now, posting is the process of transferring entries from the journal to the accounts in the ledger. So, ganito, kung sa journal nag-a-analyze kayo, pagdating sa ledger, wala nang pag-a-analyze na gagawin. Ang gagawin nyo lang is to transfer the amount mula dun sa journal papunta sa ledger. Kaya nga, kung i-compare natin, napakadali lang ng ledger. Kasi dito ang puhunan mo lang ay tiyaga sa pagsusulat. Dahil dito, maglilipat ka lang ng amount mula sa journal papunta doon sa ledger. If the account is debited in the journal, naka-debit siya sa journal, ilalagay mo din siya sa debit side sa ledger. Kung naka-credit naman siya, ilalagay mo din siya sa credit side ng ledger. Kasi kapag hindi mo yun ginawa, kapag nagkamali ka, what will be the effect? Pagdating mo sa trial balance, hindi ka magbabalanse. Okay? Kaya dapat dito careful ka sa paglipat. Kasi nga, kapag hindi ka careful, baka magkamali ka ng pagsusulat sa ang side o kaya magkamali ka ng pagsusulat kung magkano, hindi magbabalanse ang trial balance. Now, these are the steps in posting. The first one is to locate the ledger. In the ledger, the debit and credit accounts in the journal. Hanapin mo muna, kunwari, first entry mo, di ba, yung kaninang entry natin, debit cash. So, hanapin mo yung cash dun sa ledger. Ngayon, kung naka-debit siya, ilagay mo siya sa debit. Tapos, syempre, bago mo siya ilagay sa debit, ilalagay mo muna yung date ng transaction. Tapos, yung posting reference column ng ledger, at saka yung page number ng journal, saan siya nanggaling. So, don't worry, may illustration naman. The next one is to record the debit and credit amounts. So, nalagay mo na yung date, nalagay mo na yung posting reference. Now, ang kasunod, ilalagay mo naman kung magkano yung amount nung specific account. And then, you will enter the posting reference column in the journal. So, pag na-post mo na, ilalagay mo naman siya sa journal kung ano yung account number. Account number kung ano yung account na inipost mo. So, here is the illustration. So, nakita nyo Sige, isa-isahin natin. Ito yung journal. Yan, ito yung journal. Ito yung ledger. Paano ang gagawin pag magpo-post? So, nakita ninyo, di ba? Itong ledger nga pala, ganito ang itsura niya. Ilalagay mo yung account niya. Ganyan, cash yung account. Tapos, dito sa right side niya, dito mo naman ilalagay yung account number. Katulad dito, capital ito. Ito naman yung account. Okay? Ngayon, ito daw yung transaction. So, May 1, debit cash, credit, Hevera Capital, 250,000. Ngayon, ililipat mo to, uunahin mo muna itong cash. So, hanapin mo dun sa ledger, ito yung cash. So, anong una mong ilalagay? Yung month at yung date. Tapos yung year nasa taas. Parang, ganun din yung rule nun ha. Yung pinakaunang transaction, yun lang ang lalagyan. Walang month and year. Explanation, walang masyadong nilalagay dyan. JR, Journal Reference. Nakita ninyo ito, J-1, J1. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, journal or J, yung 1 ay page 1. Kaya J1. Okay? Tapos nakita ninyo, yung cash, di ba sa journal, naka-debit siya. So dito, sa debit nyo rin siya ilalagay. Okay? Ito hindi tayo gagamit ng ganito ha. Okay. Disregard yun. Kasi ang gagawin natin, i-floating na lang. Okay, so here, sa debit mo siya nilagay. So, tapos ka na dito sa cash. Kasunod naman si Hevera Capital. Kay Hevera Capital naman na account. So, di ba ito yung Hevera Capital? So, una ulit ay ano? Ayan, date ulit. Kasi first entry yan. Tapos, J1 ulit. Kasi di ba nasa page 1 siya ng journal. Tapos, ano siya ilalagay? Sa credit book. So, disregard. So, ganun lang yung paglilipat. So, nakita nyo, simple lang, di ba? So, parang mangyayari lang, titignan nyo yung journal nyo, lahat ng naka-entry doon sa bawat account, ililipat nyo lang sa ledger. Kasi isa-summarize na. Now, paano daw mag-determine ang account balance? Ito yung, ang tinatawag nga dyan ay pencil footing. Ano yun ang tawag natin? Pag sinabing pencil footing, ay you get the total amount of, the amounts of the debit and credit columns of the account. Tapos, yung difference between the amount ng debit and credit ay dinedetermine. So, yun ang tawag ng footing. Ito yung example dito. For example, ito, debit balance ito. Ang total debit daw ay 20,000. Ang total daw ng credit ay 15,000. Parang ganito yan. Parang kung sa ledger, diba dito yung ano, kung ETT account natin, dito yung, ito yung 20K. Okay? Dito yung 15. Ito yung 15K. Excuse me. Napansin niyo, di ba ito yung debit, ito yung credit. Ngayon, alin ang mas malaki? Yung 20 o yung 15? Di ba ang mas malaki ay yung 20? That's why, ang balance niya ay magkano? Pag maminusin mo yan, 20 minus 15, meron kang 5K. Saan mo ilalagay? Dun sa side kung saan mas greater yung amount, which is the 20,000. Kaya ito yung balance niya, 5,000. Tapos debit. Okay? Ganun ang pag-pencil ko. Ngayon, paano ko nabaliktad? Ito ang 15K. Okay, ito naman ang 20K. Sorry. Pangit yun. Ito naman yung 20. So, anong nakita natin dito? Mas malaki yung nasa credit kesa sa debit. So, that's why yung balance na 5K, pag pinag-minus mo sila, lalagay mo ay sa credit. Kasi, mas malaki yung nasa credit. So, that is a credit balance of 5,000. So, that is footing. Ayan, tapos na tayo sa ledger. Ganun lang ang ledger. The next one is trial balance. Trial balance na tayo. So, ano naman ang trial balance? Ito naman yung summary listing of account titles and the balance of each account. For example, cash. Ililista mo lang. Diba? Nanggaling ka na sa ledger. Nakuha mo na yung balance ng cash. So, pagdating sa trial balance, ang ililipat mo naman dun ay yung balance na nakuha mo. Okay? Kaya nga makikita natin. Sunod-sunod yun eh. Mula sa journal, ililipat mo sa ledger. Tapos kikwentahin mo sa ledger kung magkano yung balance. At saka whether it is debit or credit. Now, pag na-find out mo na kung magkano yung balance, ililipat mo naman mula sa ledger papunta naman sa trial balance. Ayan. So, it is prepared to test the equality. Yan, equality of debit and credit. Dito na tayo magkakaalaman. Tama ba yung ginawa mo sa ledger? Okay. Kasi dito, itetest na natin kung equal ba ang debit and credit. Diba sabi nga natin, in every entry, dapat equal yung debit and credit. So, dito na natin siya itetest. Though, being equal ng trial balance, it does not provide complete proof of accuracy. Kasi pwedeng magbalanse ang trial balance, pero meron pa rin namang errors. Errors na hindi nakaka-affect sa equality ng trial balance. So, hindi dito ginagarantiya na 100% accurate yung ginawa mo. Pero somehow, makikita mo na balance yung trial, ay yung debit. Ngayon, paano kung hindi balance? Ay, ito naman. This is an indication of error. Ibig sabihin yan, may error na nangyari kaya hindi ka nag-balance. Okay? So, steps in preparing a trial balance. Ano ba ang una? Ito, huwag niyong kakalimutan ito. 5 points lagi nilalagay ko dito. Yan. Name syempre ng business. Ito ang tawag dito heading ha. Ang unang line, ilalagay nyo yung name of business. Paano kung hindi binigay yung name ng business? E di name ng proprietor. Kung sino yung may-ari. Lalagay. Next, trial balance. And kasunod yung date. 3 line yan. Dapat may nakalagay. Tapos, ililista mo lahat ng accounts with the corresponding balances. Tapos, take note ha, accounts should be arranged according to financial statement appearance. Kaya pag i-arrange natin yan, kagaya nung sinabi natin kanina sa ledger, ito dapat ang arrangement niyan. Ano ang una? Asset, kasunod, liability, kasunod, capital, kasunod, revenue, tapos ang huli ay expense. Tatandaan nyo yan ha. Hindi pwedeng rumble-rumble yan ha. Nauna ang expense, kasunod ay capital, hindi. Sunod dapat. Now, the next step is to write the account balances of either debit or credit column in the trial balance. Okay, yung balances, sabi dyan, take note, it should be taken from the ledger. Doon nyo siyang kunin ha, walang iba. And then after that, you have to add the debit and the credit column of the trial balance. Normally, dapat yung total ng debit at total ng credit ay equal. And then double rule or draw a double line under the totals of both columns because it signifies that nagbalanse ka. Lalagyan mo siya ng double rule under the amount of each column. Okay. Now, chart of accounts. What is a chart of accounts? Chart of accounts, ito yung list ng lahat ng accounts na ginagamit sa business with their corresponding number. So, makikita ninyo dito, di ba, we have here, sa asset na pansin ninyo, ang asset nagsisimula yan lahat sa 1. Okay? Yan yung account number niya. Ngayon, pag pumunta ka sa liability, magsisimula siya sa lahat sa 2. Owner's equity, nagsisimula lahat sa 3. Revenue sa 4, expenses sa 5, Yan yung parang tinatawag natin na coding. Pero ang tawag natin dyan is account numbers. Ayan, account numbers yan. Yan yung sinasabi kong ilalagay nyo sa posting reference. Okay, pero kumbaga, ang pinapaliwanag ko lang, ganun lang yung rule. Kapag asset 1, liability 2, owner's equity 3, revenue 4, and expenses ay 5. Okay. So there is a comprehensive illustration ng preparation and trial balance. Okay, nakita niyo to? Ito yung tinatawag natin na chart of accounts. Yan, nakalista dyan lahat ng account titles at saka account. Okay, ito yung journal entry. Okay, journal entry. Yan, kita nyo, may general journal. Ito, inabot siya ng page 3. Tapos, ito na yung example ng ledger. Kita nyo yung cash, tapos account number niya, di ba? 101. Tapos nilista niya lang. Napansin niyo wala na tayong leave ng one space. Hindi na tayo nag-leave space dyan. Kasi ito, nililista mo na lang talaga lahat. O, ito lahat yung mga naging transaction. Tapos nakita nyo dito sa PR, nakalagay dyan. Wala nga siyang J eh. Pero tayo gagamitin natin J ha. J1, J3, J2, ganun ha. Okay, ito nakalagay lang yung page number lang. Tapos ito yung date, di ba? Napansin nyo yung date? Ayan o. Ito yung month, year, tapos number na lang. Dito sa credit side, nilagay ulit yung month and year, tapos number na lang. Tapos anong ginawa natin? Yun yung sinasabi natin kanina, yung footing. I-add nyo lahat yan, no? Add nyo lahat. I-add nyo lahat. Tapos anong gagawin? Pag maminusin. Ano ang mas malaki? Debit. Diba? That's why yung balance ay nasa debit. Okay. So may illustration tayo ha. Pwede nyo nang sundanin. Ito. Katulad dito. Isa lang ang debit, isa lang ang credit. Anong gagawin mo dyan? Pag minusin mo na. So, 25,000 minus 12,000. So, ito siya. Yun yung balance niya. Nakita. Balance niya is 30,000. Paano kapag walang credit? Katulad dito, debit lang. Eh di yan na yun. Dito, yan na yun. Yan na yun. Dito, pinag-minus din. Dito nga lang, mas malaki ang credit. Napansin nyo, 100,000 ito. Ito ay 50,000. So, ang balance niya ay nasa credit. Okay, next, ito, katulad dito, wala ring kasama. So, yun na yung balance niya. Ayan na yun. Ito, revenue. Napansin nyo ito. Walang nakalagay sa debit. Diba? Walang nakalagay sa debit. Lahat lang ay credit. So, ano lang ang gagawin nyo? I-add nyo lang lahat. Ayan o. Tinotal. Yung tinotal, yun na yung balance. Sunod, expense. O, wala dito. Ngayon, di ba nakuha nyo na yung balance dito? Ito naman yung trial balance. O, nakita ninyo? Name of the business, trial balance, tapos yung date. Tapos ito yung list ng account titles. Diba? Nilista nyo lang. Una ay asset, kasunod, liability, kasunod, capital, next, revenue, ang huli ay expense. Nakita nyo yung arrangement. Tapos, nakita nyo may column ng debit at credit. Ililipat nyo lang. Yung nakuha doon na balance sa cash, ayan, nilipat lang. Katulad dito sa expense. Ito, wages expense, di ba? 25,000. Wala naman siyang kasamahan. Kaya napansin nyo dito, yun na lang din ang nilagay, 25,000. Utilities expense, 15,000. Ayun, 15,000 lang din. And then after that, ito total nyo lahat yan. Total. So, napansin niyo balance eh. 469,000, 469,000. Tapos ito yung tinatawag na double rule. Pag sinabi nating double rule, dalawang guhit sa baba ng total amount. Tapos take note ha, yung total magkapantay. Huwag niyong puputulin dyan, tapos dyan yung ilalagay yung total, mali yun. Okay? Nakita ninyo, pantay sila yan, pantay. Para magandang tingnan. Okay, so yun ang trial balance. Ngayon, paano kung hindi nagbalanse? Anong kailangan yung gawin? Huwag magpanik ka agad. Ito ang unang-unang gagawin mo. Una, um, maaring hindi kasi tama yung pag-a-add mo ng bawat column. Okay? Ito yung mga reason. Una, incorrectly added. Yan. Mali yung pagkaka-add. Ano pa? Nailagay mo sa wrong column. Debit dapat na ilagay mo sa credit. Credit dapat na ilagay mo sa debit. Yan. Ano pa? Yung amounts. Mali yung enter mo. Kunwari, 1,000. Ang naisulat mo, 10,000. Yan. Okay, ano pa? While posting a wrong amount while it has been posted to an account. Okay. Yung isa kasi pwedeng na-omit mo. O kaya mali pala yung pagkaka-entry mo sa trial balance. Dito naman, sa posting naman, sa ledger na ito, mali naman yung pagkakalagay mo ng amount sa account. Okay, mali din yung pagkaka-debit mo, credit. So, ano pa? Some errors are ito, failure to journalize transaction. Ito yung mga ito yung mga errors na pwedeng magbalanse ang trial balance mo, pero may error. Katulad yan, failure to journalize a transaction. Siyempre, magbabalanse yun kasi hindi mo naman na-journalize yung isang transaction. Balanse ka pero mali yung balance. Mali yung amount. Failure to pause a transaction, yun. Hindi mo siya nailipat sa ledger. Ano pa, recording the same transaction more than once. Kunwari na doble mo. Magbabalanse ka pa rin dyan, pero mali yung amount. Thus, posting part of the transaction correctly as debit or credit but wrong account title. Kunwari, dapat ay debit sa supplies. Pero, na-post mo sa equipment. Okay, so yun, pwede kang magbalanse pero mali. And then, recording the transaction as debit and credit amounts are erroneous. For example, yan, 1,000 dapat, pero ang naisulat mo, 100. Ang tawag nga pala dyan ay slide. Yan ang error na yan. Pag sinabi natin slide, the number is erroneously moved to one or more spaces to the right or left. For example, yan, 352. Nagawa mong 35.20 o kaya 3,500. Kaya siya slide kasi parang napapadulas ba. Yan, napapasobra o kaya napapakulang. Another one is transposition. Ano naman ang transposition? Ito naman, na pag-mamali mo yung order ng digits. For example, ito. 352. Nalagay mo 532 o kaya 520. Yan, isa pa rin yung error. Ngayon, pag ganyan ang nangyari, hindi ka nga talaga magbabalanse. Ngayon, what are the procedures in locating errors? Una, kailangan i-recompute. Pag hindi siya nag-balance, the first thing to do is to recompute. I-recompute mo yung ledger mo. Baka kasi mali lang yung pagkakakalculate. Okay? So what should be done if trial balance totals do not balance? First, determine the difference between the debit and credit. Pag minusin mo daw yung total ng debit and credit. Now, if the difference is a matter of 110, hundreds, and thousands, then the error ay sa addition. Kaya ang kailangan mo daw gawin ay i-re-add mo column o kaya i-recompute mo yung ledger account balances kasi nga baka meron kang mali sa calculation. Now, if the difference of trial balance is divisible by 2, now look for balance equal to 1/2 of the amount erroneously entered. So, baka meron kang isang amount na hindi naiipat sa trial balance. Kaya ganun. Now, if the difference of the total is divisible by 3 or 9, ibig sabihin ay merong transposition or slide. Yung na-discuss natin sa taas na error na nangyari. Now, if the difference is not divisible by 2 or 9, let us say 265, maaari daw may na-omit na account balance sa trial balance. If there was no error in transferring to the ledger balances of the trial balance, ang kailangan mo, ganito ha, pag mag-compute ka, pag magre-recompute ka, huwag ka agad pumunta sa journal. Pabalik. Magsimula ka muna sa trial balance. Ngayon, pag na-recompute mo na lahat ng trial balance, wala namang kulang. Tapos tama naman pagkaka-add. So, saka ka bumalik sa ledger. Okay? Pag sa ledger, ang gawin mo, i-compute mo lahat. I-recompute mo lahat. Baka meron kang maling calculation. Ngayon, after mo ma-compute lahat, wala namang mali. Saka ka babalik sa journal. Baka naman, from journal, pag lilipat mo sa ledger, dun ka naman nagka. Okay, so ganun yung tip. Huwag ka kaagad pupunta ng journal. I-resolve mo muna yung pinakahuli. Kasi baka nandun lang yung error. Okay, so that's all for the discussion. And here are the video links na pwede nyo maging guide. Ito mga tinignan ko ito sa YouTube na pwedeng makadagdag dun sa naging lecture natin. Okay, so if you have time, pwede ninyo itong panoorin. And if you have questions, just type your question dun sa ating group chat para ma-address ko rin siya in general. Okay, wag PM. Okay, sa group chat na. Okay, so that's all, and I hope you learned from what I have discussed, and pwede na kayo magsagot ng inyong mga assignments because I already given the lecture on this particular topic. That's all, and keep safe always.